see everybody again. So it's been a wee while since we had, I think probably a good 6 to 8 weeks since the last open agenda. And as we've kind of asked at times for suggestions from the business, people who can come and speak. Material has been suggested, I think, I can't see Sam. So Sam Edwards was certainly someone who'd seen Terry speak, or heard Terry speak at another event. And so we, just before I actually headed off to Ecuador, we had sitting in the queue, actually trying to get out of the airport, although we never flew that night, trying to arrange with Terry to turn up, and he has, which is great. So Terry, as you can see up there, is around 2 dangerous things a year, and around why we should embrace change, why don't we, and how can we. So we all need to improve our change muscles, build a reservoir of resilience. We all need to start our own change evolution, become change fit. So Terry's going to tell his story around doing 2 dangerous things a year, starting with stand-up comedy was one of his first dangerous things. And amongst the humour here today are lessons and tools to better handle change at work and in our lives. So Terry's been a facilitator for over 25 years, an author of 5 books, and actually one of those books sat in Terry fought in the coffee table at home for a wee while. I lived through most of it. He takes psychological research and makes it interesting and useful. So he's here to help us laugh and learn as well. So please welcome Terry Williams.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everybody. A few years ago, I was hosting the New Zealand Biotech Awards, Sky City Convention Centre, the old one. Too soon, okay. 1,000 of New Zealand's best and brightest, black tie, silver service, are looking around the room. I'm starting to feel a little bit inadequate, a little bit underqualified. Turn to the waiter next to me and go, "Dude, everyone in this room except for you and me has got a PhD. Waiter turns to me and goes, "Got some bad news for you, bro." Waiter had a PhD. So I often find myself in my business of going around speaking to companies, speaking to conferences, I often find myself to be the dumbest person in the room. And I'm okay with that, because I learn stuff and it stretches me. If you constantly find yourself to be the smartest person in every room you're in, then I suggest you need to get you into some different rooms. And that's the theme of my presentation today, getting out of the room you're in, getting out of your comfort zone, to work out those change muscles to get better at getting better. And I'm going to tell you why you should do that. I'm going to tell you why we don't do that. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas around how you can do that for yourself and the people you lead or the people you care about. So first up, why should we stretch ourselves by doing 2 dangerous things a year? I grew up in Nelson. My father died when I was 2, and my mum had a fascinating range of mental health issues. My childhood was fine, but there wasn't a day that went by when I didn't think, I want to get out of this house, I want to get out of this town, and I want to get out of this life. And for me in my teens, my way of getting out was hopefully getting to university. I needed to get to university, got to get a qualification. I was in Nelson, and I didn't have any money, and my family didn't have any money, so I'm looking around for work. I need work. I'm about to leave school. I've got to find a job. And this is a real stretch for me. Back in those days, I'm an introvert. Getting out of my comfort zone was not something that I even thought about. But I made myself walk those streets, knock on those doors. Very dispiriting. No one had any jobs, or no one had any jobs for me. I had no connections. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to finish this day, I'll do this last street. So I went round a corner I'd never been down before, onto a street I'd never been down before, in the most industrial, furthest part of Nelson. No jobs, no jobs, no jobs. The last business in that street. I walked up to it, sign outside, Neil and Haddo Building Supplies, established 1868. Walk in there, gentleman in the showroom by the bathroom fixtures, older gentleman, looked like he was established 1868. Go go up and say, "Hi, I'm a student, I'm here about a job," expecting the usual rejection. And he just points at some stairs with a sign that says office. Okay, furthest I've gotten so far. Up the stairs I go, reception, young lady at reception, "Hi, I'm a student, I'm here about a job." And she points at an office, a glass windowed office, through which I can see an older guy sitting behind a desk. I'm like, okay, it's fantastic, 2 for 2. I stick my head round the corner, say to the chap, "Hey, I'm a student, I'm here about a job." He throws me a clipboard on which is a form, says, "Fill it out and you start tomorrow." Wow, fantastic. I've taken a chance, I've stepped out of my comfort zone, and it's paying off. This is a new experience. This is great. And even though I lived in Nelson and I studied in Christchurch, I would go back to Neil and Haddo building supplies every single holiday that I had, and several holidays I didn't have, to work at that place. And if I look back now at anything that I might consider to currently be success, it's all predicated on that one turning point, going down that different street, taking that chance I'd never taken. 3 years after that, I finished my degree and I was back in Nelson. I was playing basketball for the Nelson side. And I happened to run into, at an after-match function, Johanna, who was the receptionist who pointed me into the box that very night, that very day. And we caught up in old times. And she told me something that I didn't know. Something that no one at Neil and Haddo had told me for the 3 years that I was working there. Apparently, 13 minutes before I walked in that door saying, "Hi, I'm a student, I'm here about a job," they'd rung up the local Nelson branch of Student Job Search and said, "Send a student round, we've got a job." So we rely a lot on luck in this world, and certainly that piece of good luck that set me up for my success in life was due to taking a chance. By the same token, I do appreciate that 13 minutes later, another student walked in that door and experienced a different form of luck. So to demonstrate something, because it's easy for me to stand on stage and say, do dangerous things, make changes to your patterns, but there is something that fights against us. I can sway you with the facts of a logical argument, I can move you with an emotional appeal, or both. But there's something in the way, and I call this the challenge of change. Can I ask everyone please, make a fist in a safe, loving, nurturing, non-threatening way. Make a second fist, pop your cups on the floor if you have to, and pop them together wrist to wrist and knuckle to knuckle. Have a wee comparison with your neighbours, see what they've got in that department. Weird human fact about physiology. There is a 1-to-1 size ratio between whatever you've got in front of you now and the size of your brain. I realise now I should have started by saying this has nothing to do with intelligence. Pop your hands wherever you're comfortable, those you have. You'll use me as a model. So for the average person, that's 3% of your body mass. Despite being only 3% of your body mass, your brain consumes each day 24% of your body's energy. And at any given point in time, 20% of your body's oxygenated blood is in that little space between your ears. So in short, your brain is a hungry little critter, and it's constantly looking for ways to shut down and save power. And if you're doing something that you do a lot, something that's repetition, something that's a pattern, your brain will shut down. It will not divert energy to noticing stuff. How many times have you got in your car, turn on the ignition, looking for the traffic report on the radio, you're going to work, same day, same car, same road, same people, you do half a yawn, open your eyes and you're at work, and you cannot remember the details of the drive? Who's had that experience? Did I lock the door? Did I feed the cat? That's an example of what I'm talking about, what I call lazy brain pattern. So let's pop that to one side for a moment. And let's demonstrate the other element of the challenge of change. Can everyone please fold your arms? Your own arms. Now, don't worry about anybody else in the room right now. Just critically examine your own personal style of arm folding. Are you a right over left? Are you a left over right? Do you have open hands, closed fists? Do you have spread fingers? Are you sort of hiding your hands? Are you up in your armpits? What's your deal? Be very aware. Keep your arms folded till I say go. This is your starting position. When I say go, bearing in mind you're sitting very closely to other people, I'm going to ask you to unfold your arms to a wingspan, give them a bit of a shake, lower them to your hips, give them a bit of a shake, and then refold your arms, but opposite to what you've got now. So a mirror image. So just once again have a look at what you've got to make sure you get the exact opposite. Okay? Go! Shake, 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 shake. Hips, shake, 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 shake. Refold back to front. For God's sake, please stop. Again, place your hands wherever you're comfortable. I've got a prize here at the copy of my book, The Brain-Based Boss, which Richard almost finished. For you, madam. Prize for you. Round of applause for your name. You'll never know why she gets that prize, but you had the most animated response to being unable to fold your arms correctly. So let me talk that through. Every time we repeat a behaviour, right or wrong, good or bad, accurate or inaccurate, every time we repeat a behaviour, there's an electrochemical charge between brain cells called dendrites that creates a connection called a synapse. The more often we do something, the easier it is to do it again. Right or wrong, good or bad, accurate or inaccurate. Practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So, I've no idea how they research this, but apparently the average person folds their arms the same way every single time, and between the ages of 2 and 40, we will do this over 250,000 times. So it's a very strong synaptic connection. Our lazy brains love those. We can do it effortlessly, unthinkingly, from thought to action without any energy used. Love it to bits. In your brain, I compare that to a 10-lane motorway. No other cars, like no motorway on Earth. It's wide, it's flat, it's straight and it's smooth, and it gets you from thought to action instantly and effortlessly, and our lazy brains love that. Lazy brain doesn't care where the motorway is going. It just likes that the motorway is easy. So, in your brain, doing it the other way is not a 10-lane motorway. It's a gorse-covered bush track you're having to hack at with a machete. And worse than that, it's a gorse-covered bush track you're having to hack at with a machete that's right next to a 10-lane motorway. And if you want to know what the challenge of change is, it's those two images next to each other. Put the lazy brain in the mix, it's got a choice of those two, it's going to take the motorway every single time. In terms of improving your lot and not settling for average and whatever it is you want to achieve in your life or business, if change is involved, we'll end up back on that motorway. New Year's resolutions, losing weight, saving money, running marathons. 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, we're back on that motorway. So as well as the sway of the facts of a logical argument and the sway of an emotional appeal, we've got to do something about the challenge of change. And there's a couple of strategies you can take. You can blow up the motorway, which you can do with machines and with software. You can take away the old machine, you can turn off the old software. They've got to do it the new way. The old way simply is not available. But you are not machines, and people are not software. So that just leaves us with the gorse. And there's only a couple of things that will make you muscle your way through the gorse. And I call these things the treasure beyond the gorse and the scary gorse monster behind us. The things in front of us that our lazy brain will in fact apply energy to gain. The gold medal, the finish line, the mountaintop, the pay rise, the promotion, the love of our life, we want those things truly and genuinely. Our lazy brains will apply energy to get them. Or behind us, we have the scary gorse monster chasing us. We wish very much to avoid those things. The disapproving look on our parents' faces, the mocking of our friends, unemployment, bankruptcy. Our lazy brains will apply energy to avoid that stuff. Now, smarter people than me who have won Nobel Prizes in economics Daniel Kahneman and Igor Tversky. You know they're scientists, because one of them's called Igor. Very limited job opportunities. It's either that or a lab assistant, right? There will be lab assistants in the room. Now I think about it. They call them something different. They don't call them the treasure beyond the gorse or the scary gorse monster behind us. They call them pull motivators and push motivators. And what their research has told them, their Nobel Prize winning research, the maths that they've done, is one of those is more motivating to the average person than the other. So just in conversation with the person you're sitting next to, introduce yourself if you don't know each other, and let's have a 1-minute conversation. You know, which do you think, to the average person, not to yourselves of course because you're clearly above average, but to the average person, the punter in the street, which is more motivating and will make their lazy brains put in the effort to change? Moving away from what they don't want, the push factors, or moving towards what they do want, the pull factors? Talk it up for a minute, away you go. I will reveal the answer. Push factors. The average person is twice as motivated to avoid what they don't want as to move towards what they do want. The average person is equally motivated to avoid the loss of $1 as by the potential gain of $2. And who knows why, maybe it goes back to caveman times. That could definitely eat us. That's nice to have. But as a speaker, as an author, as a trainer, or as you guys, what are we supposed to do with this information? Well, my takeaway is more motivating than that or that is that and that. And if we want to move ourselves to change, or to move anybody else to change, friends, family, workers, whatever it happens to be, we need to combine both those levers, our push motivators and our pull motivators, and use them both at the same time. And it's different for different people. The other thing that they discovered was that only 42% of people are able to accurately describe what genuinely motivates themselves. And if you're asking somebody else, they might not even want to tell you because they don't trust your motives for asking. So it's a real challenge for over half of us to be able to accurately describe what these motivators are. We're not psychic. Most of us aren't that close observers of our own life. So we need to sort of look backwards a little bit, because the best predictor of our future is possibly our past when it comes to identifying these motivators. Now, we won't do it today, but what I sometimes do in this presentation is run through a little activity, kind of like an EKG, but for your job satisfaction over time. So find yourself a bit of paper, a bit of a screen, whatever device you use, a bit of flip chart, whiteboard, whatever it is, rainy Sunday, bang out a graph, XY axis, time along the horizontal axis, vertical axis is, let's call it job satisfaction, or happiness, or whatever you want to call it, smiley face. Then start plotting along the timeline the high points of your career and the low points of your career, and then join those dots. So it turns into a bit of an EKG, hopefully without the flat line that comes up every 3 seconds. That's not good. But we know when we're having that flat line experience, because every day is just like every other day. And maybe that's okay, but maybe it's not. Maybe you want something better. So looking back over those years, the second step, once you've identified those highs and those lows, is to do a little bit of analysis and ask yourself the questions. What was so great about those high points? And what was so terrible about those low points? And be specific and think back and maybe talk to other people who knew you at those times. It's a useful activity if you've never done it before. And you will identify a good list of push and pull motivators. Things that turn you on at work and things that turn you away. And then the third step is to try and move to something in future that combines those elements, providing the things that you aspire to and avoiding those things that you don't. It's a neat trick. I learned it from Chris Johnson, who runs the Future of Work program within the Auckland MBA program. Wearing my comedy hat, I was hosting him at a conference. He delivered around this technique. And I used it. I took it straight away and I used it in my next training course. And there was a woman on the course who was an early childhood educator and an entrepreneur. She owned a chain of early childhood learning centres. And she did the EKG activity, did her timeline, push and pull motivators. And as she described it, she had something of an epiphany, this realisation that had been staring her in the face, but she had never actually noticed it because of her lazy brain living every day the same as every other day. And what she noticed was all her high points were where she was working outside. And I didn't think too much about it. I was just flippantly throwing in a new activity, testing it out really. We were there for half a day. I got on with my life, rode off into the sunset. 4 years later, I was walking onto a vineyard in Marlborough to run a train the trainer program. And who should I see? Front row with that same lady. Shorts, steel cap boots, one of those big old sun hats. Clearly, she's working outside. How do we chat with her? And it turned out she'd taken some action. She brought in a general manager, worked beside her for a year, hustled the business across to her. She retained ownership but gave away the day-to-day operational management. The next 2 years, she took a degree or a diploma in soil nutrition and had been working those 6 months at that vineyard in a job that she loved every single day, something different every single day. So a real example in flesh and blood of the changes that you can make, stepping out of average, getting away from that lazy brain sameness, making a real positive step forward. Why else should you do two dangerous things and break this pattern of sameness? Mid-90s, I used to work for Lotto. I was based in Auckland, but Lotto was based in Wellington. Once a month, I would run a week-long franchise management program, a training course. And this is back in the days of Ansett Airlines, Golden Wings Club, who remembers that? Some people showing their age. Don't raise your hands when I ask questions like that. Here's a sad old person fact for you. Who remembers the song Come On Eileen? Okay, something I learned just the other day. The distance in time between today and Come On Eileen is greater than the distance in time between Come On Eileen and World War II. So children of the 80s, eat on that for a while. I've been eating on that for a couple of months. So there's Golden Wings and all that sort of thing. So back in those days they had business class on domestic flights. And I flew so often that I qualified to sit just behind business class, in what I would call resentment class, where I was close enough to see the people getting the free mimosas on their flights, but not actually get a free mimosa. I'm sitting there stewing, 6 o'clock in the morning, red-eye flight, and there's a dude sitting in the back row of the business class getting his free mimosa, dressed like Van West from Outrageous Fortune, you know, true bogan Westy type. And I'm thinking to myself, they're not going to give him a mimosa, they're going to shunt him back to cattle class with the rest of us pretty shortly. But they didn't. He got his free drink, and the flight continued. And we landed, I got off, he got off, I got my bag, he got his bag, I got in a cab, he got in a cab, round the Basin Reserve, and both we got out of our cabs at Lotto headquarters. It's too much of a coincidence for me. Hey man, shake him by the hand. Turns out he's won Lotto. First purchase, flight to Wellington to pick up his giant cheque, which is a thing they do, or did back in the 90s. And I take him up to marketing, introduce him to Karen, all that sort of thing, give him a little manual, what to do, blah, blah, blah. And I go off to run my training program, don't think about Van West again. 8 months later, I'm going into a large West Auckland supermarket to do some frontline training with some Lotto employees. And who should I see front and centre at this large supermarket, ironically working the Lotto terminal, was Van West. And I thought to myself, amazing! He's invested his Lotto winnings, bought a business like a supermarket, and in kind of an ironic twist, working the Lotto terminal himself, a man of the people with his colleagues. And that would be a great story, if that's what happened. Guess what happened? Not that. Took him aside, had a wee chat, he'd blown the lot. He won 330 grand, 8 months later, nothing to show for it. No house deposit, not even a garage full of Harleys. None of that. I took him out for that coffee and I said, hey man, I don't mean to harangue you, but how do you feel about this? And he told me something 24 years ago that's stuck with me ever since and really made me think about change, the fear of change, and how perhaps not changing might in fact be more dangerous than at least trying to change. And what he told me was, hey look Terry, when I won Lotto, I was 30 years old and I had 30 bucks in the bank. That night, I won $330,000 and the only thing that changed was my bank balance. Everything else that led me to 30 bucks at 30 years, that all stayed the same. My attitude, my friends, my beliefs, my behaviours, nothing else changed. So where else was it going to end? Up. But exactly where I started from. And that really hit me and stuck with me. Every training course I run, every presentation that I give, that's a real underlying theme. There's a lot of people afraid of changing, losing what they've got. And I argue that the risk is actually staying the same, because the world will change around you and you'll be left behind. Super squirrel. Now, in terms of my two dangerous things, as Richard said in my introduction, the first of my dangerous things back in 2001 was doing stand-up comedy. And I had a couple of kids, 2 and 4. That was their ages, not their names. Have you ever met anyone who's got a couple of kids called 2 and 4? Ask them what happened to 1 and 3. Who's got kids? Who's ever been a kid? Who's waiting on DNA test results? I like to include everybody. So you know what they're like at that age, 2 and 4. Every day is a new adventure. Even things that are this, oh wow, the sky's blue again, what are the odds? And at that time, I was in a job that was fine. It was fine, prospects were fine, people were fine, work was fine. But I had that real stuck in the mud, kind of trapped in the bottle feeling of my first slide of the day. And I wanted something different, wanted something else, but I had a lot to give up, a lot at stake if I moved. So I looked at those kids and I thought, I want some of that back. Not childishness, but childlikeness. And so that's when I started my thing of doing 2 new dangerous things a year. Not necessarily dangerous as in leaping out of planes, although I have done that, but dangerous in the broader sense, dangerous by my own definition of dangerous. Things that have scared me, stretched me, gotten me outside that comfort zone, and discover what's really inside us. And for me, those first 2 dangerous things were snow skiing and stand-up comedy. And I appreciate none of you have ever heard of me. It's not really why I do it. But I've had some pretty interesting gigs over the years. I work in conferences and cruise ships. So it accounts for about 30-ish% of my income. And it's really interesting. But more than that, I've learned stuff. And I've met people. And it's stretched me. And I'm no thrill-seeking life risker like Felix Baumgartner, who got a balloon, put a space pod underneath it, went up into space and stepped out and jumped off from space. I am not that man, I have not done those things. But what I have done every year, twice a year since 2001, is 2 dangerous things a year by my definition of dangerous. And not things that really terrify you. Because again, our lazy brain, under stress, the executive logic centre shuts down for a good period of time and the emotional regulator goes out of control. It's not a good learning time when you're terrified. You want to kind of straddle. 1 foot in your comfort zone, 1 foot outside, have an experience, get back in here and process the learning. So next time, that comfort zone limit is over here. And over a period of time, looking back, it's expanded beyond all recognition and you are not the person you were 5 years ago. It's a process. So effectively, it's the experiential learning process. You have an experience, initially it's a fail, you have a wee think about what happened, you take some learning from that, some meaning from that, and then you adjust your strategy, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It's how humans learn naturally. Now, I couldn't help but notice all of you walked into the room today. I'm guessing none of you ever went to walking university. None of you have a degree on the wall that says Walking 101. And yet all of you appear to be competent walkers without having been formally trained. and you'd have learned to walk via the experiential learning cycle. So it's cast your minds back, you're 8 months old, you're in your nappies, you're on your bum, you're in the lounge, other people are around you walking, they're getting all the benefits of walking, they're walking to the kitchen counter, getting the cookies, you want some of that cookie action, so you're motivated, up you get, bit of a collapse, bit of a cry, that's your initial fail, the cross. So once a bit of encouragement, up you get, stagger wobble, grab the couch for support, grab the cat for support, and eventually you got those cookies. So in a nutshell, that's the experiential learning cycle. So if you've ever read any Malcolm Gladwell or read any blogs, you've come across this concept of 10,000 hours. Originally studied by a Swedish chap, Anders Ericsson, which talks about deliberate practice. Accelerating your development. 2 dangerous things a year by my definition or your definition, things that scare you, things that stretch you, but don't terrify you. As long as you're in that learning zone, you'll develop and you'll build further development on the initial development. You can accelerate this process. In my case, my stand-up comedy has accelerated my training business, my speaking business. Here am I at Te Papa in Wellington, 1,000 people, hosting the New Zealand Concrete Awards. Jealous? The trophies weigh 8 kilograms. I kid you not. We had a wee conversation about how we take photos with these things. So that's not all of what I do. Some of it, as I say, is on the cruise ships. Again, 1,200 people, 2 shows a night that I would never get to perform in front of usually, because as I say, you don't know who I am. That's a fantastic experience for me, and as I was saying to Kerry beforehand, it's a free holiday. So an amazing experience. But mostly, it's the thing that got me out of my comfort zone to get my books published. If I had a childhood dream, it was to become an author. And that's not jumping out of a plane, that's pretty low risk. But the same Terry that was afraid to go knocking on doors looking for work as a teenager was also afraid to follow his dream. And I didn't get a book published until I was 39. It was in my 5th year of doing dangerous things. To work up the courage, to wander in to the nearest publisher to my house. I lived in Mairangi Bay in Auckland, a whole bunch of publishers around there. I walked in the door. Just like I walked in the door of Neil and Haddo 1868. I had an idea, and I went up to the receptionist, just like I said, hey, I'm a student, I'm here about a job. Hey, I'm nobody, I've never had a book published, I want one published. And she didn't say, get out of here, you lunatic. She'd be well within her rights to do. She said, take a seat, I'll go get Robin. That was odd. Again, long story short, the idea I was pitching was the middle book. The guide, how to kiss, get a job, and other stuff you need to know. 400 skills, life skills for young people. Told in a comedic, non-preachy style. Unbeknownst to me, 3 days before I'd walked in that door, pitching life skills for young people, but not preachy, they'd just given up on a year's worth of work with a Californian surfer duo who happened to be Christians, with exactly the same idea, but preachy. And they've been arguing with these authors, we love the idea, but stop preaching. And finally, 3 days earlier, they said, look, we're out. Because you're so preachy, look, all we wish is for someone to walk in the door and say, we've got the same idea, but it's not preaching. 3 days later, I did just that. And I would never have done that had it not been for my 2 dangerous things a year. And the scariness, the change muscle workouts that I'd had of doing those stand-up comedy routines. But it's not all successful publishing contracts, it's not all luxury cruise liners, it's not all fantastic black tie events. Most of the comedy that I still do is open mics. I don't know if you know what open mic night is, but it's when anyone can show up and do anything, and whatever happens, happens. And here I'm in a pretty disreputable pub in Ponsonby, I'm doing some jokes, and the audience and I find out simultaneously if they're funny. So it's never not dangerous. Even though this was my first dangerous thing, it continues to be a dangerous thing every time I step out there. And I still do it. I don't need to, I choose to. Keep those change muscles worked out. In this case, I'm staring down someone in the front row who's taking photos. Not supposed to do that without permission. You guys have got permission. Me and Rebon are on that night. We go up to him afterwards saying, hey dude, not cool, what's your story? He turns out to be a Kiwi based in Japan who's a professional photographer. He'll give us these photos, pretty rock and roll, pretty Henry Rollins kind of photos. And he runs a comedy room in Osaka. And now I've got a place to stay and a comedy show to perform at in Osaka. Same thing happened to me when I was in Singapore. I was doing a corporate presentation like this, wandering the streets trying to find an open mic night. I bowl into Heroes club in the Circle there in Singapore, if you know it. And comedy show's going on. I get on stage, pretty good time. Talk to the Pakistani fellow who runs it. He runs a room in Karachi. Guess he's doing a comedy show in Karachi next year. I guess that would qualify as a dangerous thing. Give me back next year if I'm still alive. Okay, so that's why you should. And pretty compelling arguments, I think. But most people don't. If you choose to do this, you will be in the minority. You will shine out like a diamond in the rough. Why don't most people do this? And the alternative is sameness and routine, missing out on opportunities, not noticing threats that sneak up behind you. Let's talk it through. So, who's ever rented a car, or bought a car, or borrowed a car? How long did you take it? When you drive into the gas station, what's the first question that's popping into your head? What size the doofer on? And one of my clients is the Automobile Association. They get me in a couple of times a year to teach public speaking. And they shared with me some of their research. The fact that I'm about to share with you is not known to 82% of New Zealand drivers. On your dashboard. I love how the biggest laugh of the day is something I didn't say. On your dashboard, right next to your petrol full ET indicator, there's a little arrow pointing one way or the other. Over 90% of cars in New Zealand, apart from a few imports, have this of the last 20 years. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands. I'm not going to ask you to point at anything. 82% of drivers, so it's not kids, it's adults who can drive, didn't know this. How often do they stare at their dashboard? How often does the light bounce off that arrow into their eyes? How often do I need gas? They are seeing this multiple times a day. They have looked at it possibly hundreds, if not thousands of times over their driving lives. And 82% of New Zealand drivers don't notice it. We don't notice sameness and routine. Forget this, what about your jobs? What about your relationships? What about the business opportunities and threats out in the external environment? How much of that stuff are we not noticing? Because we are numbed due to the sameness of our lives. Doing those micro-dangerous things and popping back into our comfort zone, apart from the learning, stimulates our attention. We notice more stuff and notice those little things that might be useful to know. It's called our reticular activating system of the mind. You may not be familiar with the term, a lot of syllables there. As I say, hey Richard, have you noticed the new 2020 Toyota Prius? It's that fluorescent lime green colour. And he hadn't noticed it, but what does he notice everywhere he goes for the next 3 weeks? That car, that colour. Who's ever bought a car, driving on the roads, and suddenly every third car is your car? So that is known as, you all know what it is, now you know what it's called. It's called the reticular activating system of the mind. It controls our focus and attention. And it's like a bouncer at a nightclub, where the nightclub is our conscious mind. Limited capacity, only the sexy people. And the bouncer is supposed to keep out the riffraff, all those lime green cars and shiny things. What we like in our conscious mind is the high value stuff. Our key performance indicators, our life goals, our relationship goals, the important stuff that we wish to be focused on so our brains will give it some energy. But what gets in there, because our bouncers are underdeveloped, is anything. Lime green cars, shiny things, whatever Trump said last night, useless stuff. So we need, by doing dangerous things, to develop that muscle. But most of us don't, so stuff gets in there and our developing is left behind. Guys, please stand up. You've been sitting for a while. Please stand up, please stand up, please stand up. The usual 13% of people moan about it. That'd be great. No high-risk interaction required. Once again, with the person you were talking to before, the person next to you, maybe a group of 3 if that's required, ideally peers. Can everyone please, if you're right-handed, raise your right hand. If you're left-handed, raise your left hand. Click your fingers 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lower your hand. Fantastic. Imagine for a moment that on that hand, your dominant hand, your pointy index finger is a magic marker. Facing your buddy shortly, you are going to write on your own forehead with your magic marker the capital letter E, whilst your buddy is simultaneously doing the same thing. You will observe them, they will observe you. So repeat that 5 times so you clearly see what they're doing and they clearly see what you're doing. Capital letter E 5 times. Once you've done that, please take your seat to indicate you've done. Go. These are neither good nor bad. Problematic is if you are by default predisposed towards self-orientation, you tend to notice less quickly and notice less of stuff going on in the external environment, like those threats and opportunities and petrol indicators and so forth. So please feed back to your colleague which way they did it. Did they write it so it could be seen by themselves, or did they do a mirror image that could be seen by you? Please provide that feedback to them your ability, or your necessity to have an other orientation. So something to think about. Those of you who were self-oriented, doing dangerous things might help you out in your development there. But we've got a societal issue as well. You know, I talk about doing dangerous things, people automatically leap to jumping out of planes and climbing Mount Everest and all that sort of thing. It's not what I'm talking about, but I can understand why they think that. Because we live in a very risk-averse society. Perhaps even a cotton wool society. And I'll tell you a wee story. Now this is a picture from a tourist destination in the Coromandel. It's called Waterworks. Anyone heard of Waterworks? Yeah. Is it awesome? It's pretty amazing, right? This is several years old now. My kids are now in their early 20s, so when they're real young, we went on to this place, discovered it almost by accident. And I'm pretty sure it was created by a former council engineer, a water engineer, retired and stole a whole bunch of equipment on his way out the door, because everything is based around pipes and water pressure and all this sorts of stuff. So you go around the corner on what used to be the old gravel road there, side of the hill opposite the entrance, this big water-powered spider made out of barrels is climbing his way across the cliff face. Go past the entrance, there's a robot-powered clown waving hello. You're in this water cannon fights, there's all this sort of stuff going on. And it was fantastic. Kids, time flew by. There was none of this, are we there yet? Are we done yet? Anything like that. It was actually fantastic. Day flew past. Sun, sort of getting lower in the sky. Kids are literally, there's a swimming hole with a tyre swing off a branch, like we pretended we had when we were kids. And they're having a great time in the water hole. I'm trying to find some sunny spot to lay out the towels in the sinking sun. I get kind of lost in this botanic hedge maze. Won't stop to ask for directions. And I come out in the centre, luckily, and there's a path, and the path ends at this panel. 3 levers. Pull this one, do not pull this one. Suspended in the air, maybe 20 feet above me, is this skeletal blue whale made out of copper piping. And just as an artistic installation, it's fascinating, sun glinting off it. It's just amazing what they've done. Pull lever number 1, you gurgle from the bushes. And the whale starts to move, just sort of emulating the natural sort of flow it would display if it was just floating through the sea. It's just quite mesmerising. I pull lever number 2, gurgle from the bushes, little water spout comes out the top, quite delightful. Pull lever number 3, 8 tons of water falls on my head. I cry that sort of soul-purifying laughter cry we haven't cried since we were children ourselves. No one's around, I don't care if they were, this is delightful. The lever's reset, I take all the stuff across, plonk it in the sun, drying out. I've got some time to kill, take out the old notebook and pencil. I'm going to observe the next 100 people who come through who have not seen what's gone on ahead of them and see how many pull lever 3. So once again, 30-second conversation with your buddy next year. What percentage of people do you think pull lever 3? Talk it up while you go. What do you think? 80% interesting? Thoughts? Close to 100. It's a good auction. Actual answer, 19. 19. I know, right? This is not a Scooby-Doo cartoon. You pull in 3, a buzzsaw on a rope isn't even swinging it. At one point, I saw maybe a 4-year-old rushing to pull the lever 3, and a mum go, "Don't touch them." And I'm not here to correct people's parenting, but that's the society we're kind of in now. We've all got these children's playgrounds, soft, spongy padding on the bottom, British safety standard 1074, no vertical drops greater than 800 mils without a handrail, all this kind of stuff, not like the playgrounds we had. So, by taking these risks, by encouraging your children in a safe way to extend themselves, you are doing them a favour. When they hit the competitive job marketplace, they'll have an edge over everyone else. When they go knocking on doors like I did back in 1980 blah blah, the early Duran Duran era. So, we've covered why you should, we've looked at why people don't. I want to throw a few ideas at you around how you can make a start, how you can muscle through when it gets tough, and how you can bring some other people along for the ride. So I've got this little model I've developed called change evolution. There's a few stages you go through along the way, starting out as a change sloth, ending up as change fit, where you want to be, but there's some hard work along the way. Haven't got time to cover that today. But if you are interested in where you are at in your own personal change evolution, or indeed anyone else you can use this, it's all free, just hit up amidangerous.com, works on your phones, maybe in the break afterwards. I'll send a paper through as well if you want to on-circulate, that kind of stuff. So amidangerous.com. So I've created this model, this 8-step danger DNA. I thought you guys might appreciate that in your business. It's the first time I've ever worked with anyone who actually knows what DNA is, so that's encouraging. So again, I haven't got time to cover all the bases, but I will look at 3 in particular. Creating distance, placing whiff-in reminders, and quick wins. So let's talk through what I'm meaning here. These are ways that you can stimulate your bouncer, your reticular activating system, and start to notice more opportunities to move yourself forward in your development at an accelerated rate. Now, does everyone know who Nelson Mandela is? Well, that's great. Might seem like an odd question to ask, but I've started asking it because about maybe a year ago I was doing this bit, and maybe 3 minutes in, from the looks of the faces, it was horrible sinking in my stomach that they did not know who Nelson Mandela was. I go to the young fellow in front, "Dude, he was man of the century." The young fellow goes, "Which century was that?" So yeah, a wee time out. Back in my day, the word most associated with free was Nelson Mandela. Now it's gluten. Times have changed. Mandela was, for me, as a teenager, my lime green car. I'd never heard of him. Then suddenly a song hit #1 in New Zealand called Free Nelson Mandela. Now I notice him everywhere. Later on I'd go in to read his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. Filled in some of the blanks for me. Like I didn't know, for example, the African National Congress, today a political party. Back in '84 it was an activist movement fighting for change. But originally it was a workers' rights organisation, and Mandela himself was not the spokesperson we think of, but a shy, quiet, on the sidelines, workers' rights lawyer. One night, big rally planned, thousands in attendance, bunch of arrests were made, no one to go out on stage and go rah, rah, rah. Everyone's panicking, oh, what's going to go? Mandela, it's up to you, mate, you're the senior guy. At that stage, as I say, not a confident public speaker. But he created what I call the Mandela list. What I can only assume Mandela would have called a list. He got a blank piece of paper and he wrote on the top of it the names of 2 people he knew that he considered to be already very good at the thing he wanted to get good at. Not professional speakers, but 2 people he could directly observe. Underneath those 2 names, he wrote down 10 specific, observable, repeatable behaviours that he thought they did that made them so good at the thing he wanted to get good at. And he walked out on stage, Mandela list in one hand, speech in the other, and he did those things, and we know how history turned out. 40 years later, year 2000, I'm watching CNN, he's just been named Time Magazine's Man of the 20th Century, and he's addressing the United Nations General Assembly to a standing ovation. A man who 40 years earlier was afraid of public speaking has just delivered the biggest public speaking gig on earth to a standing ovation. He's still being applauded, he's walking off stage, I'm watching this on TV. He gets interviewed in the corridor and he mentions the Mandela list. He's got nothing in his hands, he's kind of miming. And he says something like, look, even now, 40 years later, when I walk out to speak, I don't literally carry that list around with me, but I still carry that list around with me. And I still walk out and I still do those things. And that struck me 19 years ago as a trainer, as a tremendous way for us to use dissonance to engage and develop our reticular activating system, for us to notice those who are ahead of us and emulate their path. Dissonance means a sense of dissatisfaction between 2 points, where I am now and where I want to be. And where I want to be is where those people are. So again, no time to do it today, but my challenge to you over the weekend coming up is to develop your own Mandela list, to identify those 2 people in your life or career or whatever it is you're doing on the side. Where are those 2 people? Identify them, get them on paper, and then start that list. And that will stimulate your reticular activating system, and you'll start to notice other people and other behaviours. And in doing so, that'll move you through that course in your brain to become more like them in the way that you wish to. So that's called creating dissonance by using the Mandela list. Who remembers Sarah Ulmer? What's she famous for? Cycling. Specifically, won the gold medal in 2004 for New Zealand at the Olympics. 3,000 metres individual track pursuit. That's the roundy one in the velodrome. You can never tell who's winning on the TV. She was the keynote speaker at the first ever corporate conference that I hosted as a comedy MC in 2005. And we were having lunch before she spoke, and we were chatting away, and I just noticed every time she was talking, she'd go, talk, he'd go, no, talk to her, talk to her. She just kept doing this finger thing. I was like, what's going on there, Sarah, you're training to be an Aussie Rules linesman? What's the deal? And she told me the story that I'm now telling you. She won her gold medal in 2004, but she was supposed to win a gold medal in 2000, but she didn't. She didn't win a medal at all. She came 4th. And the distance between her and a medal was that much. Something, nothing. 4 years, your whole life, something, nothing. And so she said, every day, maybe multiple times a day, any time, she felt like, in my words, the gorse was getting a bit tough. Wake up, cold morning, raining outside, or maybe I've got to practice late. I'll eat a hamburger instead of a salad. I'll leave practice, go see a movie. So when she won her gold medal, it wasn't by that much. It was by what was at the time a world record margin. And world record margins in great leaps forward aren't made in great leaps forward. They're made in lots and lots of those, consistent amounts of those. And those to me are 2 dangerous things a year. or want something every day that scares you, that develop you on an ongoing basis. Not a one-off running a marathon or a one-off jumping out of a plane or a one-off climbing a mountain. That's neat, by all means do those things for fun. But in terms of developing yourselves, really mastering yourselves personally, what's your version of that? What's the thing you can, this is what I call a WIFM reminder. It's WIIFM and it stands for what's in it for me. What are those push and pull motivators that I talked about earlier? Not just doing that activity, but having them in your face all the time. Visually, next to your computer, next to your clock, whatever your fridge, whatever things you look at the most. And in her case, she was a physical athlete, so something like that is a really powerful WIFM reminder for her. So two of those three change danger DNA strands, create dissonance with the Mandela list. Secondly, WIFM reminders. Last one I'm going to cover today is about coffee loyalty cards. Who's got a coffee loyalty card? Who's got more than one? You don't mean the word loyalty. But everyone else knows what I'm talking about, right? Little business card size, bit of cardboard, stamp, 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 fill it up, get a free coffee. This particular company, large multinational coffee company, decided to run an experiment. And they produced millions of these cards in 2 equal batches. One was buy 8, get 1 free. The other was buy 10, get 1 free. But the first 2 were pre-stamped. So logically, they were the same. Buy 8 in both cases. So statistically, you would expect if you released an equal number into the marketplace, that either side of even Stevens would come back redeemed for the free coffee. They released these millions, even number, and 6 months later they counted up which had been redeemed for the free coffee. Which one came back the most? The 10 with the 2 freebies. And not even close. 200% more. So nothing logical or statistical is happening there. Something very human is happening there, what psychologists refer to as endowed progress. People are more inclined to continue with a behaviour when they believe or perceive, rightly or wrongly, that they've made a bit of a start. So where's your evidence of momentum? I call this quick wins. If you're going to run a marathon, that's hard. Running to the corner of the street, that's a quick win. Focus on that first. In your projects at work, your change projects in your lives, don't focus on the big thing. Do plan for the big thing, but focus on the 2 free coffee cups. What are your 2 free coffee cups? What's your version of that? Who's on your Mandela list? I want to finish up with a story. A story about my son who's centre screen. He's now 23, 6'4", 100 kg, strapping lad. Back when he was 14, he was playing cricket for East Coast Bays Club up in Auckland. And gloriously sunny day, grand final. And they're up against their arch enemy, their mortal nemesis. It's like a Disney movie. They played each other twice that season. They've won once narrowly. They've lost once narrowly. Chance for redemption in the final. And my son's team bats first, does pretty well, competitive score. The opposition then bats. They're doing pretty well. They're catching up. 2 balls remain. Opposition require 6 runs to win. Bowler comes in, bowls a fast ball, batsman plays it square. So those who don't play cricket, sideways basically. My son's there, he's fielding, picks it up, and of course sideways is side on to the stumps. You can't see 3 stumps, you only see 1 stump from the side. It's the worst possible angle in cricket for fielding. He picks it up without hesitation, throws the ball to the stumps, misses it by a metre, misses the keeper by 2 metres, but doesn't miss the boundary fence on the other side of the field, thus gifting the batsman who'd only moved a foot 4 free runs. So let's reset the scoreboard in your own minds. The opposition now require 2 runs with 1 ball remaining. Now this is not international cricket. The umpires are not professional umpires, they are the coaches. So by good luck, my son's coach is the umpire standing at square leg right next to Josh. And as a coach, he takes this as a learning moment and says in what I can only assume is a loving and nurturing way, hey Josh, if that ever occurs again, the safe thing to do, the sensible thing, the non-dangerous thing to do, let them get the 1, mate. Pick the ball up, don't throw it, run it in and take them off with your hands, mate. Safer thing to do. Okay? Okay, coach. Okay. Opposition require 2 or 1 ball. Same bowler comes in, bowls the fast ball, same batsman, he plays the same shot to Josh, who picks it up without hesitation, throws it in the stumps! Smashes him out of the ground. And I remember it so vividly as he's carried off on the shoulders of his teammates, hero for the day, with the coach in the foreground going, Jesus fucking Christ. So, key takeaway, folks, is throw the ball. Pull lever 3. My little catchphrase, my fears, if I am talking about doing dangerous things, my second greatest fear is that I'll never achieve my potential. My greatest fear is that I already have. As I said, I grew up as a teenager in the Duran Duran era, which will give you an indication of my current age. I have no desire to settle for average. I don't necessarily want more, but I want different. I'm still keen to explore, to learn, to develop, not just myself, but those around me, like yourselves today, for example. That's why I do this now. I would never have considered doing this 10 years ago. What's your version? What's your version of throwing the ball? What's your version of pulling lever 3? You don't have to answer it today, but my request of you is, can I ask you to please stand up? So at least publicly declare that you will pull lever 3 when it presents itself to you. So over the on, I've got my mobile phone set up on the tripod in the corner. I'm going to give you a practice first, pointing at that and shouting out, pull lever 3, practice first, 1, 2, 3.
Pull lever 3.
This time like you meant it and a puppy's life depends on it. 1, 2, 3.
Pull lever 3.
Thank you very much, enjoy the rest of your day, get back to work!
That was excellent, everyone. So we have the opportunity, Terry will take some questions. This is your chance maybe to do your first dangerous thing and put your hand up and ask Terry a question. So, any out there? Oh, yep,
it's not a question, but when you were saying 2 to 3, we were saying we were going to get our kids to do it.
And I hope you do. And to be honest, that was one of the things that really motivated me back in the day. My first book, as I say, was life skills for young people. How to kiss, get a job, and other stuff you need to know. And that was my version of that, basically, to, as I say, bring them along for the ride. And whatever else I can do for my kids, I would want them to be able to take those safe, managed risks that set them apart and give them advantages that even I can't give them. That said, I'm not sure they can read. I know they don't read.
What's the funniest but most humorous, disastrous lever 3 that you've pulled?
One year I generally have a rule that I don't reveal the previous 3 years, because oftentimes they involve other people and I don't know how it's going to turn out. So 3 years is a good space for that. And for example, you guys are cool, I'll share this. My wife and I got divorced and then got back together again after 8 years apart. So that was one of my dangerous things that year. which was 7 years ago, so it's going pretty good. Although when we got those teenage kids together to explain how your mum and I are getting back together again, my daughter said, I think you can both do better. To answer your question, without a joke, in there, one year, maybe 8 years ago, I had no musical ability whatsoever. I was going to learn to sing and learn to play guitar, and I was going to perform in front of at least 200 strangers, which went really well the second time. I won't describe any further the first time. It's a PTSD kind of situation.
What's your biggest tip for when you get going, you're really excited, you want to do it, and then you kind of hit that first block of it's not working, it's too hard?
That's cool. So there's a really good way. So oftentimes it's a stress response.
Yep.
And so you want to re-engage your logical brain, because under high stress, caveman stuff, fight or flight, that tends to be the first thing that goes. That's not going to help us live. Calculating algebra and GST doesn't help you live. So in these situations, to re-engage it quickly, you ask yourself 3 questions. First question is, how specifically am I feeling right now? Not just, I don't want to do this, but give it a label. So there was a study done with 4 groups of people was shown a video. It was the same video every time of a car driving into a wall. And each group were asked more or less the same question. And the first question was, how fast was the car going when it came into contact with the wall. The second group were asked, how fast was the car going when it hit the wall? The third group were asked, how fast was the car going when it struck the wall, when it collided with the wall? And the fourth group were asked, how fast was the car going when it smashed into the wall? And basically, the same video. The estimate went up by 12k an hour every single time. So our perception of reality can be distorted by the descriptors that we give to it. So it's really useful to have what we call granularity of emotional descriptor, to be able to specifically describe your feelings. Are you feeling nervous, irked, uncomfortable, whatever it is? Second question, what specifically is causing that? So not just jumping out of a plane, but what about that? And then what about that? And then thirdly, what, if anything, can I do about that right now or later if I do actually give up at this stage? So if you can answer those questions, that's awesome, it's useful information. But the very act of asking those accelerates the re-engaging of your logical brain and also distracts you a wee bit. So that's the three-step process, and it will flush out those stress hormones in maybe 90 seconds as opposed to 12 minutes, which I think is the average time it takes usually if you do nothing. Good question.
What does the manual say that they give you when you win lotto?
I'm trying to remember the first, because they try not to be too prescriptive. It's your money, do what you like. They do suggest the economically wisest thing is to retire debt. And secondly, seriously consider who you want to tell about this. And that's what I tell people, having worked for Lotto for a few years. If you win, not to keep it from your family. And 300 grand probably won't bring people out of the woodwork. But these latest 19 million people, their lives are going to alter and not entirely in good ways. Particularly if they go, as one of them has, just gone on TV on the first day. I seriously advise against that. And why are you asking? Yeah.